My 4-year-old daughter was found crying alone in a locked car. No jacket in freezing rain. My parents left her there during a family brunch. My sister smirked. We just lost track of time. I didn't yell. I took action. And within 2 hours they were begging me to stop what I'd started. My 4-year-old was found locked inside a freezing car, soaked in rain, crying so hard she could barely breathe. No jacket. No hat. Just a thin sweater and her bunny. My parents had gone to brunch. That photo, the one my friend Jenna sent me, will never leave my head. Eevee hunched in the back seat, fogged up windows, her hands against the glass. Jenna had spotted her outside a restaurant while walking past. He thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone would be right back. But 10 minutes passed. Then 15. No one came. So she snapped the photo and sent it to me. That's how I found out. From a friend. Not my mother. Not my father. Not my sister. While I was sitting outside an operating room hoping my husband would survive surgery. Ryan had gone under an hour before. It was his 3rd surgery in 2 years, and this one wasn't routine. I had to work. I remember just staring at the floor tiles in the waiting area, counting them in my head because the silence made everything feel worse. Then Jenna's message lit up my screen. First the photo. Then the words, "I think this is Eevee. Kendall, she's alone in a car. It's freezing. Are you nearby?" I thought maybe Jenna had made a mistake. It didn't make sense. I'd left Eevee with my parents because I had no other choice. It was the first time in her life that I'd trusted them to take care of her without me. I even packed her jacket, boots, and raincoat. I told them to take her home or take her with them, but not to leave her alone. That was my one rule. I called my mom first. Straight to voicemail. Then my dad. Nothing. Haley, my sister. No answer. So I left. I didn't even tell the nurse where I was going. I walked out of the hospital like a bomb was ticking somewhere, and I was the only one who knew it. It was a 20-minute drive and I don't remember a second of it. The whole time I kept thinking, what if she gets sick, what if she panics, what if someone tries to open that door? When I pulled into the parking lot, the first thing I saw was Jenna. She was standing near the car, holding her umbrella, looking completely stunned. And then I saw Eevee. Curled up in the back seat, hugging her bunny like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I unlocked the door with the spare key I keep in my glove compartment and pulled her out. She was shaking so badly I could feel her teeth against my shoulder. She said one sentence again and again. I told them I didn't want to stay in the car. I told them I didn't want to stay in the car. I didn't even have it in me to cry. I wrapped her in my coat, put the heater on in the front seat, and waited. I waited because I needed to see them. The 3 people who were supposed to protect her. 23 minutes later, they finally walked out of the restaurant. My mom was laughing. My dad had his phone out, showing something to Haley, who was sipping an iced coffee like it was a sunny spring day and not a freezing December morning with a storm warning. They stopped when they saw my car. My mom's face dropped. My dad froze mid-step. Haley smiled and said, "We just lost track of time." That's what she said. After leaving a child in a locked car for nearly 2 hours in 38-degree rain. My mom started saying Eevee didn't want to go inside. That she insisted on staying in the car. That they kept checking on her, which was a lie. Jenna had been watching that car for over 20 minutes. No one came out once. I didn't say a word to them. Not one. I got in my car with Eevee curled up in her blanket in the back seat and I drove away. And on the drive home I made 2 decisions. The first, I would never trust them with my child again. The second, they weren't going to get away with it. Not after this. They thought I needed them. They thought they could play family when it suited them, ignore boundaries, and laugh their way through anything. They forgot who they were dealing with. By the time I got home, Eevee was asleep in the back seat, bundled in a dry blanket I kept in the trunk. I carried her inside, gave her a warm bath, and tucked her in with her bunny and the space heater humming softly in the corner. Then I opened my laptop. There was no screaming. No rage. Just precision. My parents' mortgage. I'd been making the payments for almost 3 years. They were behind, and rather than let the bank take the house, I stepped in. Quietly. Automatically. Every first of the month. That stopped with 3 clicks. I paused the autopay, pulled the transaction logs, and sent everything to my lawyer. I didn't owe them a safety net. Haley's college tuition? I'd been covering the difference after she blew her scholarship. Another little secret no one talked about. She never thanked me. Not once. It was just expected. Because I had a good job, because I married someone responsible, because I didn't need the help. That ended too. I emailed the financial office at her university and told them not to expect another dollar. No explanation. Just, do not bill this account again. I am not the responsible party. 32 minutes later, my phone started lighting up. My mom called twice. Then my dad. Then Haley. I ignored all three. Then the texts started coming in. Mom, what did you just do? Dad, Kendall, you need to call me right now. This is serious. Haley, are you insane? You're ruining my life because of a misunderstanding? That word. Misunderstanding. They thought this was about a mistake. It wasn't. It was about being told not to leave a child alone in the cold and doing it anyway. It was about laughing over pancakes while Eevee cried in the dark. It was about 3 adults who made a selfish decision and didn't even try to make it right. I didn't respond. I didn't give them anything. And when Haley sent the 4th text asking how she was supposed to stay in school now, I simply blocked her. I wasn't done. The next day, I sent a letter to the mortgage lender removing my name from any association with their account. I'd consulted a lawyer by then. He said I wasn't obligated to continue paying, especially since I had no legal ownership of the property. I had the receipts. All of them. Every wire transfer. Every cover payment. Every time I saved them from default. Let them figure it out. They came to my house that night. I didn't let them in. They knocked for almost 10 minutes before giving up. I watched through the peephole as my mother shouted something at the door, and Haley paced back and forth like she was the one betrayed. My dad just stood back, hands in his pockets, silent. I didn't care what they had to say. That door stayed shut. The messages kept coming for days. Mom, we made a mistake, but this is cruel. We're your family. Haley, I'm going to lose my apartment. I hope you're happy. Dad, can we at least talk? No, we couldn't. Ryan came home from the hospital 5 days later. Weak but recovering. He asked what happened while he was under. I told him everything. He didn't say much. Just looked at Eevee, then at me, and nodded. Is it good? Don't go back. I didn't. And they had no idea how far I was willing to go to make sure they never got near my daughter again. They weren't used to hearing no. Not from me anyway. When I was younger, it was always drilled into me that family comes first. Even when it didn't make sense. Even when it hurt. Even when I had to clean up their messes. I was the responsible one. The dependable one. The fixer. This time I wasn't fixing anything. I was burning it down. 3 days after I cut them off, Haley's college posted an alert on her student account. Payment overdue. Enrollment flagged. She sent screenshots. I ignored them. Then came the guilt campaign. A family friend messaged me out of nowhere. Said my mom had called her crying. That they were confused and hurt and just wanted to rebuild. I asked her if my mom told her about leaving a child locked in a freezing car for 2 hours. She didn't reply after that. More messages came in. Cousins, my aunt from Phoenix, even my old high school friend Carly, who I hadn't spoken to in years. They all started circling, acting like they were concerned, but their tone was clear. I was being too harsh. Too cold. That it was just a mistake. They didn't get it. They weren't there when I found Eevee. They didn't hear her say she begged not to be left alone. They didn't see the fear that took days to drain out of her eyes. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. 3 grown adults made it together. What none of them knew, what I never shared, was what my parents said to me when Eevee was born. We were still in the hospital. Ryan had gone to get coffee. My mom sat on the edge of the bed and told me that I shouldn't expect too much help from them. That they'd raised their kids already and I'd chosen to have one, so the responsibility was mine. She wasn't being cruel, not directly, just clear. They wanted to be grandparents when it was fun. When it looked good on Facebook. Not when it required actual effort. And that was fine. I never forced them to babysit. Never dropped Eevee off without asking. Never asked for $1. Until that day. Until the surgery. Until I was desperate. So no, I wasn't interested in rebuilding. A week later, Haley's apartment sent her an eviction notice. Apparently, she hadn't paid rent in 2 months and was relying on the tuition stipend to float her bills. My mom called me that night in full panic mode. Left a voicemail. Said they couldn't afford to cover her rent and still keep up with the mortgage. Then she said the part that made my stomach flip. I know we made a mistake. But Kendall, you're a mother too. Don't let your sister end up homeless. That was it. They still didn't get it. Still didn't understand that it wasn't about punishment. It was about consequence. They left my daughter alone in the cold because they didn't feel like taking her into a restaurant. She could have gotten sick. She could have been taken. She could have died. And they had the nerve to turn it around like I was the cruel one. Ryan told me not to listen. He said I was doing the right thing. But I wasn't done yet. The next morning I got up early, opened my laptop and filed a report with CPS. Not to get them arrested. Not to ruin them. But to make it official, on record, that I would never allow them near Eevee again. And the fallout from that would be worse than anything they were expecting. I didn't do it to be dramatic. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because one day if they ever tried to push back legally or manipulate their way into my daughter's life again, I needed a paper trail. I needed it documented. So I filed the CPS report. I included the photo Jenna took. I gave the exact date, time, restaurant location, weather conditions. I named every person who had custody of my daughter that day. My mom, my dad, Haley, and explained that I was at a hospital for my husband's surgery, and I had entrusted them with my child for just a few hours. What they did wasn't a gray area. It was neglect. They left a 4-year-old alone in a locked car in freezing rain for almost 2 hours. I didn't lie or exaggerate. I didn't need to. 3 days later, my parents got a visit. I wasn't there for it, but I heard about it fast. They'd been flagged for an investigation. A home visit, some questioning, a review of their prior history. Of course, they didn't have any record, but now they had a case file. Now they had a warning. And they knew exactly where it came from. My mom didn't call. She didn't text. She sent a long email. It started polite and formal, like she thought she could handle it like a negotiation. She said they were deeply sorry for the incident, that it would never happen again, and that families make mistakes under stress. Then she added something that made my blood run cold. We're all hurting here, Kendall. You filing a report was a serious overreaction. There are consequences when you take things too far. Right. Consequences. That word sat with me all day. Because they were finally feeling it. The same thing I felt when I saw that picture. That knot in your chest when you realize someone else has control now. When your comfort, your security, your routine, all the things you took for granted, are suddenly pulled out from under you. And they couldn't spin their way out of it this time. Haley, on the other hand, completely lost it. She posted a full-on meltdown on social media, ranting about how some people love to destroy their own blood, and that she was going to be forced to drop out of school and get a job she hated because of one mistake. She never mentioned Eevee. Not once. She turned off comments, but people still messaged me. Some supported me. Some said I should forgive and move on. But a few shared something else. That this wasn't the first time Haley or my parents had been careless with kids. One of our cousins apparently never left their son alone with them again after a close call during a beach trip. I never knew. It was a pattern. I just didn't see it until it was my child in the back seat. Meanwhile, Eevee was finally starting to sleep through the night again. The first few days after it happened, she would wake up crying. Once she told Ryan she had a dream that we forgot her in the rain. She didn't know what CPS was. She didn't know what I was doing behind the scenes. She just knew we were holding her closer. Safer. Ryan kept telling me I did the right thing. But I wasn't satisfied. They still didn't understand. They thought this was about anger. About being dramatic. About money and punishment. But it was never about that. It was about showing them that they weren't untouchable. That I was no longer the quiet, obedient daughter who would clean up after their messes. I'd changed. And the next thing I planned to do would prove that even more. Because I wasn't just cutting them off. I was going to make sure they couldn't use me or Eevee ever again. They still thought this would blow over. That I'd calm down. That once Ryan recovered and things went back to normal, I'd come around. Maybe I'd even apologize for embarrassing them. They didn't understand that I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. The mortgage was defaulting. The tuition wasn't coming back. CPS was already poking around. But none of that made them stop. I could feel it, they were regrouping. Planning the next angle. Probably hoping to turn extended family against me or guilt-trip me into letting them back in. But I was already 10 steps ahead. There was one more thing they were clinging to. A trust fund. It wasn't massive, but it was solid. Built from the inheritance my grandmother left behind. My grandmother, who would have lost her mind if she knew how her daughter had treated her great-grandchild. My parents were co-trustees. So was I. I'd barely touched it since it was set up. It had been intended for family emergencies, back when I still believed that meant something. My parents had access, and over the years they dipped into it more than once, always with big promises to pay it back. They never did. So I initiated a full audit. My lawyer and I pulled records, bank transfers, withdrawals, dates, signatures. It took less than a week to prove that the majority of the emergency withdrawals were anything but Haley's spring break trip to Miami, pulled from the fund. A new AC unit for my parents' lake cabin, funded. My dad's gambling debt payoff from 3 years ago, also from the fund. They never expected anyone to look. They thought I'd never question it. Once I had the full report, I filed a legal motion to dissolve their trustee rights and assume sole control. The lawyer warned me it would get ugly, that families sue over things like this. I told him I wasn't worried. They didn't have the money or energy to fight it. And even if they did, they'd lose. Because this wasn't about money anymore. This was about proof. I wanted them to know I wasn't just cutting them off. I was erasing their access to everything they'd ever used to control me. No more safety net. No more secret accounts. No more calling in favors behind my back. I changed the locks on my house. I blocked every number. I pulled Eevee from the daycare my mom had a connection to just in case. Enrolled her somewhere new, one I paid for completely on my own, no ties to anyone. No risk. Ryan was still recovering but getting stronger every day. When I told him what I'd done with the trust, he just nodded and said, "Good. They don't deserve it." That night, Eevee climbed into our bed and fell asleep between us. She was warm. Safe. She hadn't cried in a week. Her bunny was tucked under her arm. She looked like a completely different child from the one in that photo Jenna had sent me. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't revenge. This was protection. I wasn't punishing my parents and my sister. I was removing them, like a tumor. Quietly. Permanently. Without giving them another chance to spread damage where they weren't welcome. I was done giving chances. But they weren't done trying. They didn't knock this time. They showed up outside my work. I just finished a late meeting, and when I stepped out of the office building, there they were, my mother and Haley, waiting by my car like they had every right to be there. I didn't speak. I didn't stop. I unlocked the door and got in. My mom knocked on the window. Haley stood behind her with her arms crossed, like she was daring me to roll it down. I didn't. Instead, I reversed slowly and drove away. 10 minutes later, the text started again. "Mom, you've made your point. It's gone too far. Haley's dropping out. We're losing the house. You're hurting your own family." That was the one that broke something in me. Not because of what she said, I'd heard worse. It was what she didn't say. No mention of Eevee. No mention of what they'd done. Not once did they say, "We're sorry we left your child in danger." It had always been about them. Themselves. Their comfort. Their image. Their lives. That same night, I finalized the last step. I filed for a formal restraining order. I knew it would be a fight. I knew they'd try to argue it. But I had documentation. The CPS case, the trust fund audit, the voicemail recordings, the texts, the photos. Most importantly, I had what mattered. A reason. They left a child alone in freezing rain. They endangered her life, and when they were caught, they minimized it. So I made it official. They were no longer allowed near my daughter. No visits. No surprise drop-ins. No showing up at daycare. No sending gifts or messages through extended family. They were gone. For good. Ryan backed me all the way. He said he'd never understood how much I'd tolerated until now. That watching me cut them out was the first time he really believed we were free. And Eevee? She's better now. She hasn't asked about them once. Which says everything. It's been 5 months. We moved. Changed numbers. Got a new sitter we trust, someone Eevee loves. Ryan's back on his feet. I took a promotion I'd been putting off for years. The silence from my parents is loud, but peaceful. I hear things through others. The house is up for sale. Haley left school and moved back in. They're telling anyone who will listen that I cut them out over one small mistake. They've rewritten the story in their heads so many times, I don't think they even remember what really happened. But I do. I remember the photo. I remember the rain. I remember my daughter's frozen hands and the way she whispered, "I told them I didn't want to stay." That's what I hold on to. That's why I never looked back. And I never will.